Okay, it's 7 o'clock, and I call the October 8th Planning Board meeting to order, and if anybody happens to be here for the HDC, that meeting is downstairs. This is the Planning Board. First on the agenda are the minutes.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes as amended.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And I abstain since I wasn't here. Okay, then we go on to A&Rs, and I understand there are none. Okay. Next on the agenda is discussion/decision. The applicant is Generation. What? Oops.
I am unaware.
All right, Joyce and the clerk, okay.
Somebody didn't tell our planner.
Never happened before. So it's not on the agenda. And I haven't seen it. So I don't know.
We see you next time. That's the 22nd, right? Okay. I'm sorry.
What was that? Oh,
An A&R,
Oh.
yes. So now we move on to discussion/decision. The applicant is Generation AJW LLC. It's a site plan review to convert a movie theater complex to a commercial garage, office, and 2 apartments on 2.95 acres with associated parking, drainage, and landscaping. And it's Holmes and McGrath. And the board heard the original last meeting when I was not here, and I understand we have some new information.
Madam Chairman, Jeff Oppenheim for the petitioner applicant. Jeff Hamilton and his son Jesse are here this evening, and our engineer Mike McGrath are present as well. We had a good discussion 2 weeks ago. The board and staff raised several issues, and we have taken most of the suggestions and put them on a interim plan here that I'd like to go over with you. There are a couple of issues still to be resolved, and Mike will address those more specifically, since they're more in the eyes, more along the line of engineering issues that he's better able to deal with. The first issue that you raised was that the wash pad was in Zone 2. It's a small corner of the property which is part of Zone 2. Even though the system is designed as a closed system, we have moved it outside of Zone 2. So it's now here, where it was over here previously. We're adding areas, we're labeling areas for the materials that we're going to be storing on site, which will be mulch, loom, chippings from our trees, and actual cut firewood. We're adding 5 spaces over here, sort of as what we would consider to be overflow parking. We were showing spaces on this side. We're going to eliminate those spaces and put them right over here. In addition, we're on the suggestion of the fire department, we're adding a hydrant on the site right here. So now there'll be 3 hydrants, one right over here, just off the property line, one directly across the street, and one, within feet of the building here. Mike added some drainage in this area over here, which we will provide you with the details of. We're enlarging this drainage area here, adjacent to the parking lot, and adding a drainage area here as well. It will be one-way traffic in and out from this, from Route 151. Again, to refresh your memory, our truck traffic will be coming in through this side entrance, which will be gated when we're not open for business. Employees, visitors, deliveries will come off of Route 151. And those, I believe, summarize the changes to the plan since we last discussed it 2 weeks ago. And at this point, I'd like to turn to Mike McGrath to explain a couple of other issues.
My name is Michael McGrath. I'm a registered engineer and registered professional land surveyor. My firm prepared the plans. I filed a letter today with the planning board on I'm going to give you all copies.
I need one of those, thank you.
I'm not going to read every word. The first thing in the, we were told by the staff there was going to be a condition that all these parking spaces be changed to be angled spaces. I point out that when I park in this kind of parking space, I always look so that I could drive through, so I don't have to back out. And so I would ask the board not to impose the angled spaces, especially in this area, because an angled space requires 100% of the time people to back out of the parking lots. And these spaces, I believe, are appropriate design. The owner is willing to create slanted spaces here on the sides, but these spaces in the center spine and the spaces in here ought to be 90 degrees the way I've shown it, and I would ask you to take note of that. We were also told that the exit and exit driveways were too wide and that smaller curb cuts, as they are way oversized, especially since we're going to use the side entrance for our truck access. Mr. Hamilton did agree that he would come in off of, there's a paved driveway up here, and he'd come in this way to get into his facility. However, there are other vehicles that he can't control that may enter the site. I wrote Route 151 is a dangerous highway. I have a close friend whose son was critically injured on Route 151 in an accident. I'm very cognizant of the threat of accidents on 151. In fact, a lot of times I avoid 151. So what I have done is I have given you on 4 11x17s the turning movements of two of the more larger vehicles that might enter the site. The sketches that I gave you are the first one that's labeled sheet 1 of 4 right here is the turning movement for a fire engine coming from the east, and then a fire engine leaving. And the next page is a fire engine coming from the west. And if you look at these diagrams, it shows the wheel movement and the overhang of the vehicle. This is a typical fire engine that's in one of the AASHTO standard vehicles. It's a ladder truck, and you can see from this that we require the whole driveway entrance in order to move onto the site without driving over grass or anything else. I also gave you, on the next page, tractor-trailer trucks. If tractor-trailer trucks, if you've noticed, especially most of the lights, the tractor-trailers actually encroach onto other travel lanes. And here, it's unavoidable that a tractor-trailer truck entering the site as, from the east, as shown on page 3 or 4, would encroach onto the oncoming lane to turn in, and they also encroach when they leave. But we don't expect the tractor-trailers. My engineer called the jury duty of I was also going to give you a FedEx truck, but the FedEx truck has almost the same movements as the fire engine. And so I believe it's unsafe to make these driveways any narrower or to make the throats any narrower. I did look at, when you come in off of a busy highway, you don't want to have a decision point here. You want to put the decision point as far in as possible. I thought about narrowing the driveways in here, but frankly, I didn't think it would look very, very good in the long run. And if you look at the movements that are that these vehicles take entering and leaving, I think that you would agree with me that this is the most appropriate thing, is to leave these driveways in place. I think I've talked about everything that's described in my letter. I have more full-size plans if you want to look at them for any reason. Are there any questions that I can answer?
So on these plans, are the parking spaces also 20 feet each?
Yes, they're 10-foot wide, they're 10 by 20s.
And then is the 20 feet in between a typical size for street parking?
These were built in 1970, and the zoning I'm sorry, it's like 1974, 1975, 1976. The zoning bylaw says all the parking spaces in existence are deemed to conform to the bylaw unless there's a change in use or an increase. So I look at these parking spaces as subject to the exemption in the bylaw, and that's a typical parking lot everywhere in Falmouth predating 1990. 1990, you increased the aisles to 24 feet.
Okay.
I don't want to tell you how narrow it is behind Main Street. It's a lot less than 60 feet.
Ralph?
Yeah, yes, Mr. McGrath. In the material storage area, you're going to gate off the access to that entrance there. And then my guess is that you're going to want to restrict access to that area at night and on weekends and whatever. So how will you prevent the access, people from just coming in the main area and then getting into the material storage area without keeping emergency vehicles from getting into the back of the facility in case like there was a fire back there?
I will turn this over to Jeff.
So the planning staff were initially concerned about restricted access off of the driveway to the east. We could also provide for another gate somewhere internally. The concern was that people who were using the ball fields would use this area for parking, having fun, and we do know already, we've owned it for a few months, that it's a convenient spot to drop trash and other debris, which we have been cleaning up on a steady basis since we've owned the property. So we're not adverse to doing another gate. We just aren't showing it on here. It really is a concern, of the business more than I think flow of traffic or anything else. And I think hopefully the planning board would leave that to the applicant to make a decision on that issue.
Yeah, I guess just my point is that whatever you do, if you put a gate there somewhere, that it doesn't restrict access to the rear of the facility, and that's a big opening on the west side of that material storage area, and I'm trying to figure out, you put the gate up closer to the front, where there's just a narrow driveway, as long as the emergency vehicles could break through that, whatever, those are
Or have a
possibilities. I know
key if it's locked.
A key or something like that, because I know you're gonna want to secure that area. That's a lot of
Yep.
money back there.
It's a quiet area, it's lower.
Vehicles back there, vandalism and all the rest of that stuff. Sort of a remote area out there.
Well, certainly we'll consider that now that it's been raised. What we would propose is that we would come back with a final plan in the next week, so you would have it, and your staff would have it to review well before the next meeting. Hopefully, we can have a positive motion at that point. But we would, I think, benefit from any other comments you have so that we can get to a point where we have, in fact, a plan that we could reasonably expect might get favorable approval. We have a hearing before the Zoning Board of Appeals and a special permit on the 24th of this month.
I just want to clarify for my own self here. Would the applicant like to gate off the material storage area on, not only just on the road there, but next to the building? Is that something that the applicant desires to do?
Hello, I'm Jeffrey Hamilton, the applicant. Yes, we do intend to gate, and we'll probably do it somewhere up forward here where it is narrow and have a Knox box for the fire department to have access. It's similar to the system I have at our other facility. I think that earlier we let people know it's gated rather than have them go partway down the hill. Just makes more sense.
Okay, so Knox Block is in the plan. Okay, thanks.
Paul?
I just have two comments. One, I understand there are apartments there, so that minimizes some of the problems we've been talking about.
Exactly. That's exactly why we added the apartments. It's going to be a substantial increase to the cost.
The other issue is there's 4 sketches here on access through the main entranceway, 2 of them by emergency vehicles coming from the east and from the west. There's also truck traffic coming in. It's my understanding most of the truck traffic will be directed to the road next to the ball field and come in the backside. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
I don't see any landscaping, so I have a question. I mean, I know that's your business, but,
We have a plan. We showed it last week.
I'm sorry, because I wasn't here, so. If you can't find it, just tell me.
Last week, the only issue was moving the wash bay out.
I was just curious whether this is going to be just grassed between the 2 drives, or we're going to put,
We did have quite a few plantings there.
okay.
Low species, so it wouldn't, bother any sight lines.
Okay. Thank you.
Would you like me to pass this around?
Nope. No, I was curious because it wasn't in here, and I wasn't here last week, so I was just asking that. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, Pat, I'd just like to ask Brian, the open, the open items on the staff report that we've got in front of us, I think some of those have been resolved since this was developed. For instance, the lot coverage, is that still an open item?
I don't believe it is, Ralph, but we'll review the plans as they emerge. One of the reasons we kind of hesitated at a staff report because the plans are still evolving, but that's certainly something that was on one of the original drawings. I don't believe they still exist. So let's get through for a motion and make sure that staff report is checked off.
Okay, all right, like the Zone 2 water resources, I mean, that was, when they moved the pad, that took care of that. And I don't remember anything about a wildlife corridor before. Is there still an open issue on the wildlife corridor?
What they do, all it does is, when they're in a certain zoning district, it just alerts you that it's in the wildlife corridor. We're not suggesting one be opposed. We're just saying, letting you know that it's in the district, like just if it's in Zone 2 or the Water Resource District. No one's suggesting that the site surrounded by 3,000 acres is a corridor.
Yeah, right.
It's one off or one up.
And the Commonwealth of Massachusetts owns the property to the west, to the north. Town of Falmouth owns the property to the east, the Falmouth Conservation Commission. So, you know, we're really surrounded by open space. And, you know, the chances of the wildlife wanting to use our space is probably diminished as a result.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd like to hear comments on Mr. McGrath's reasoning for keeping the width of the drive, since there was obviously some objection to the width of the drives, and the parallel versus the angled parking. I'd like.
Find his comments persuasive. Assuming that we're going to see a plan that has the angled parking on the side, but the perpendicular parking in the center, that makes sense. And I also find it persuasive as to the width of those turning radiuses because of the fact that there is going to be commercial operation there in between parks.
Okay. Does anyone else? Jim?
The only issue that I had an objection to at all was addressed right away with the moving of the wash pad, so I'm ready to go.
Okay.
I think that the angled parking on the two sides makes sense, and just my opinion, with the short 20-foot span, I know it's existing, but it wouldn't hurt to angle the two sides.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think with those angled on the sides, it gives you a little more room between the other, but I think we should keep them perpendicular like that, because I like to drive through myself. It makes a lot of sense. And having these things wide, the entrance is wide, having driven a truck in the city of Boston and wishing I had wide things to drive through, I'm all for doing that. And I'm glad to see that the wash pad has been moved, because I started thinking about that, and I was wondering what kind of precedent we might set by allowing something like that. So I'm glad that was voluntarily changed.
Okay. Anyone else have comments? Okay. Is there anyone from the public who has any further comments on the changes? Okay. So on the 22nd, you'll have your changes solidified, and I presume that Brian will have, based upon our comments tonight.
Based upon your comments, based upon the information presented, we'll give it a full, fair, and impartial review with the town engineer and come back with a recommendation to the board.
Okay.
We will recalculate the lot coverage because we lost a few parking spots, and so it will change slightly. So we'll make sure those numbers are to the staff. Thank you.
Great.
Close the discussion.
It's okay with me. All right, thank you for coming. Okay, next on the agenda, we have the Sunrise Estates bond.
Yeah.
And Brian, would you please tell us what this is about? I know we were sent information.
You do. In your package, you should have some information that I can discuss with the board tonight. A memorandum from Scott Schluter of the engineering staff to me. It's dated October the 3rd, together with a copy of the subdivision plan, which was approved 10 years ago, I guess. Here are the photographs of what Mr. Schluter references in his memorandum, just in the way of background. The plan of residential development board first sold back in 2005. And with under the subdivision control law, in the forms of security that the applicant can offer, what the covenant release is a bond. This is a cash bond and held at the town treasury. The purpose of the bond is to ensure the completion of the road and attendant facilities that come under the board's review. And any conditions of approval that are germane to the road. So there has been over the past few years some repeated complaints from property owners and abutters with regard to the construction of those roads. And we have had in the past some partial bond releases with the binder. Usually bring it up to grade, bring it up to binder, off we go. The last time there was a engineer's inspection was 2011. And there was a punch list of items that were to have been completed. And it was 2011, I believe, May 2011. So here we are some 2 years later, and I asked the engineers to go out and re-inspect the subdivision. So the homeowners in the area contacted the planning staff, and the butter contacted the board. And that's the inspection report you see in front of you tonight. Now, the proper procedure here is precisely what we've been doing, is get you an impartial third-party observer report that gives you some information to make a decision on the work that you had required as per the plans approved, this subdivision plan here, have either not been completed or haven't been completed to a satisfactory standard, or there has been work that has been added without the board's approval. So on the basis of this engineer's report, I'd like the board to discuss and consider an official letter, an official communication with the property owner, the developer, to bring to their attention this report officially, and the board's desire to see the work either completed or the plans amended to reflect whatever changes that may be necessary by a date certain. And I would ask the board to consider perhaps that the date certain would be by the end of the year. So I need the board to focus on the report and focus on essentially it being a communication that was from an engineer to me, now to you. And then procedurally, keep all the lawyers in my life happy, officially vote and officially communicate with the developer your wishes, which would be to complete the work or amend the plans accordingly to complete the work by a date certain. That in a nutshell is the basic discussion tonight. You don't have to make a decision tonight if you want more information or want to discuss it further. That's okay, but typically speaking, these are letters that are known as demands. Put them on notice. Things have to happen. And it's the board's authority. I need the vote of the board in order to do that. So that in a nutshell is where we're at. Any questions, you have to answer them. Go from there.
Okay. Comments, questions from the board? Doug?
So on the report, you made mention of an additional area of paving that was done, and some of that paving may or may not have had proper drainage. So how will we proceed? Will we just instruct them to fix it, or will there be some input from the Falmouth engineering staff?
The board approved the plans in a certain way back in 2005. In order for the bond to be released, the roads have to be built as per plan. Or the decision of the board has to be modified accordingly, reapply to the board bring in an amended plan, show the drainage, show the calculations of the work, and go from there. So you either amend the plan, reflect what's on the ground, or you take out or remedy the inconsistency in the design drawing. It would be essentially rip up the paper.
Other, yeah, Jim.
Yeah, well, last meeting I was thinking about, what's the rush, why don't we give them more time? And then once I realized how long this has been going on, I'm really afraid we're setting a precedent that developers go on and on forever. I think that I think I'm ready to take the bond and finish the job. I just think they've had far too much time and have really ignored it. So I don't know when we can do it, but that's when it's appropriate.
Procedurally, you need to give them notes.
Whatever you say.
Demand on them. Have
Time.
Official reports, and I'll go to the board. You can set a time certain. If the bond is forfeited, if it's not done by a certain date, you do that tonight, if that's your thing. Usually you give them a few months to clean it up.
I think they've had years.
Give them a reasonable amount of time.
Have they been given any notice before?
This will be the first time they officially you vote to send the notice. So you have to put them on a letter.
Due process, Jim.
Understand.
I think 60 days to get started on this would be good.
Except Paul was addressing it
Yeah.
first. Richard?
Rich, I called on Paul.
I have a question and a comment, if I may. I notice there's a 16-lot cluster subdivision, but the drawing here shows 18 lots. I'm just curious why that's different.
There's a special permit that issued together with the subdivision plan that allowed for 2 bonus lots. That special permit has kind of gone away, so those lots are not eligible for building permits today.
Okay, there's 18 there. How many are actually been built today?
I don't remember of building.
Looks like very
permits.
few, maybe half.
Half a dozen.
The comment is the report done by the, Mr. Shooter from the town staff is very well done. And I think that provides the basis for notifying the contractor to move forward. And I would just suggest that we forward this quickly with a time frame to react to these things, with comment that if action doesn't occur in the time frame, then you have no choice but to pull the bond and have the work done separately. So I think that's important to do that right away.
Correct, it would be a letter that goes out together with this report. It would be certified now, the applicant and or their attorney.
But it should be a deadline to do this in a timely
Again,
fashion,
the board has.
60, 90 days or whatever it is.
Whether the board, or now, on my recommendation to the board is about, to the end of the year, it's a reasonable process issue. But I need a vote.
Ralph?
Yeah, the water shutoff, just as one example, sticking above the surface, considerably above the surface on the sidewalk, that could cause a lawsuit. And so I'm sure that the lawsuit would be initially directed at the developer, but if we didn't enforce this, or take action like this and say if he doesn't do it, we're going to do it, isn't that the smart thing for us to do? In other words, if he is jeopardizing the safety of people using something that he was supposed to, which he did put in, but he put in improperly, I think we have the obligation to move forward, not only if things aren't, and the drainage isn't right, but how about the safety issues?
Yeah, I think we need to act quickly on this, that we could prioritize certain things, because I know when it comes to paving and things like that, there was a time window because of asphalt being available, but Things like the D-night system that needs to be fixed, that could be taken care of any time of year and should be one of the first priorities. The safety things that Ralph mentioned, people tripping over things, if that's something that can happen sooner rather than later, I think we really need to push this.
Rich?
Yeah, I think due process would require that we give them notice, that we give them approximately 60 days, and that we only require within that 60 days to see that they have contracted for the work, not necessarily that it's been done, but to show us the contract.
Doug?
I don't think just telling them to do the work within 60 days is sufficient when we are given a report that says that there's paving in areas where it doesn't belong. I think they need to come back with an engineer's plan showing how they're going to remediate the situation and fix the drainage issues before they just go off and do the work.
That's where I speak to the issue that he has to come back to the board and modify the plan accordingly. Right now, the hearing for this plan is closed. The decision of the board is final, recorded with everybody. His option is to do the plans as the approved plans show. Or that's it's an option that we would put in the letter, you either do the work or you would modify the plans accordingly, or you take some form of action, as Richard has suggested, by the end of the year, most of the final course of paving is in. There's not much out there. There's a continuous plan dark that stays open all year long.
I just don't want to have them go out there and do some miscellaneous things like pull the filter cloth out of the drains and pull the weeds away from the D-night system and then say, okay, I'm done. Because I think the problems are deeper.
It's going to be inspected again.
The process would be re-inspected. If the inspection fails, we'll go out and do ourselves with vinyl.
So then the notice that we give, the 60 days or whatever we choose, is for the deadline for them to do what? Everything, including coming in with plans if it needs to be modified?
We need to take action to remedy everything that you see on that list. My recommendation is in 60 days before. If you want to come in and see the board, I would think it would be in their light and self-interest to do so soon, to show that we want to modify the plans and do X, Y, and Z. In the meantime, resetting gates, doing certain things they should do with this. If they want to keep the pavement, they want to have the new design calculations, they need to go back and see the board. There are other property interests out there. The procedure and due process require those.
Okay, thank you.
I would suggest that it might be unrealistic to expect all the work to be done, but it would not be unrealistic to see the work to be contracted. Proof they have binding contracts with the people who are going to do the work to get it done within a certain time.
I stand by my recommendation.
I have a problem with that because the punch list goes back 2.5 years ago to May of 2011, I believe Brian said. It had 2.5 years to remedy a lot of this, and they have not proceeded at all. And binding contracts only just go so far. Let's say they don't have the money. We've said, okay, well, binding contract doesn't hold because nobody's going to do it if you don't have the money to pay them. I do believe that the better course would be to send essentially a demand that it be completed by, say, the end of the year, because by the time a demand is put together and it's sent off certified and they receive it, you can say 60 days, okay, but if we say by December, the end of December, last day of December, okay, fine, then it's a date certain. We know what that date is. I don't have a lot of faith that this will be brought up to the standards that we need to have it brought up to. Whether it's 60 days or a year, because they've had 2.5 years to do that and have not made the progress on it. So My desire would be that we just send out a demand letter as, excuse me, as Brian has stated, that the work must be accomplished by December 31st.
Yeah.
Or 30th. Yeah, Jim.
I'm in total agreement, except because of the asphalt plants closing on the weather, and sometimes they close December 6th, September 8th, September 18th. I really think we should push it as hard as we can to the 60 days, as tight as we can, and force them to move ahead.
Brian said there's a batching plant that remains operational in Dartmouth year-round.
Is that all the time?
Well, still,
I've had projects closed down in the winter before, and
You pay a premium price.
well, then I'm fine with the end of the year.
Ralph?
yeah, Brian, the three roads that are mentioned here in the report, are they all private roads? Okay.
There's a portion of Kroll Road that's public, the first 400 feet from Davisville Road. I'm not sure the engineer's report implicates it in the sidewalk, but otherwise they're mostly private roads.
Okay. The reason I ask that is that there are two issues in this report that that I look at that that don't really blend with what we say when we say these things will be constructed as per the plan. One is the maintenance of the and the issues with the denitrification system, and the other is the drainage manhole that is filled with silt. Now, there is my understanding that there is a homeowners association in this in this subdivision. Okay, so if there is a homeowners association, those homeowners associations are obligated to do certain things on their own. They pay dues to their association, and then the association does things, okay? So I just want us to be cognizant of the fact that some of these may have to do with maintenance and not construction. And in those two situations, I think fall under the definition of maintenance. I'm just wondering whether or not the developer will say, under those two particular issues, since he's going to get a copy of this inspection, he's going to say, for instance, those are maintenance issues that are the responsibility of the homeowners association, not mine. So I'm just saying that under what we have in front of us, that's a possibility. Okay, that's all I just want everybody to be cognizant of that fact.
And that, I agree with you, Ralph, on that is usually the homeowners association.
I know it is in my homeowners association.
Of course.
We had to pay for the cleaning out of our catch basins on our own because they were private roads.
Right, well, those two things could be exempted from this demand.
They have to operate as designed. If they weren't constructed, to operate as designed, it's fair game. So I understand your concern, but right now I think everything on the punch list is implicated here. Sewer system, you're right, any maintenance issue might cleaning out the weeds or whatever it might be, well, that, you can contest, you know, so I'm not terribly concerned about it. If in fact the manufacturer's specifications would be met for soundproofing, it's not a maintenance issue, it's as per design. So my sense is we're going to be okay, but I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, but I think there's probably more to the maintenance, the denitrification system than just keeping weeds out of there and controlling the noise. I believe those types of systems require periodic maintenance. And if it hasn't been done...
For sure, anything that's maintenance related is the responsibility of the homeowners association. Believe me, I understand that the legalities of pulling the bond, we can spend it on it. For sure, Ralph, we're not going to spend it on some of the maintenance.
Right, okay, I just...
Absolutely.
Just a point.
Point well taken.
Rich?
Does this inspection report tell us anything about whether the denotifying system is working or not?
That would be
I
under
didn't
the
see it.
review of the Board of Health. They're the ones who do those inspections and get the reports back. They are charged with enforcing Title V.
I mean, it could be messy, or it could be noisy, but if it's working, then
Your decision required it, and then be put in as per plans and inspected. The ongoing maintenance, the ongoing monitoring is a homeowner association and a Board of Health issue. So you won't be getting into that.
So, is there any further discussion? Okay, then I would need a motion that authorizes Brian to send notice to the owner of the subdivision, such as we discussed, that everything, this punch list must be completed by the last day of December, or that the town will take the bond and do the completion itself. Is that,
Or plans modified accordingly.
thank you.
I'll move that.
Okay.
Second,
Okay.
Are we allowed to speak at all on any of this or not?
when we're done.
No, this is a bond, and it's the issue of the board.
But I'm the person who wrote the letter that triggered all this, and we've been dealing with it, and I think I have a couple of important points to bring to the board's attention.
Unfortunately, there's a procedural thing here that the hearing is closed. Decision has been made, just like we did, like I told the board, I know Mr. Shamsi, Butters, the homeowners association, to be properly in front of the board, you have to be properly in front of the board. Right now, we have demand notice on the property owner, the majority of the developer. So timing is everything. At this point, process, you would have to have everybody here to discuss the issue.
I would also suggest that if you have comments that you think Brian should hear relative to this, please bring it to his attention in the office. Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion. It was seconded by Jim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Okay, so Brian will put that notice together and, he'll put the notice together, okay. Yeah, I know that, but it's not all that common to, that I know what the process is. We move on to the draft medical marijuana bylaw. The by right bylaw. And you have a copy of this. We were sent it. Does anybody have any comments that they wish to make on this, concerns? Or you like it the way it is? Do you want, yes?
Jim's
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim.
I brought this up at the last two EDIC meetings, and they made a point of pointing out to me that this would be considered a retail use, which is directly prohibited by their charter with the Cape Cod Commission, which is still in effect for 4 years, 3.5 to 4 more years. So they're saying it can't happen if we're going to move it to that area. That they didn't even get into the discussion whether they want it or not. They just said no retail use is permitted. And they just wanted me to bring that to everyone's attention.
Can I get a clarification? No retail uses in the technology park? Is that
Yes.
what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't say that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, the EDIC works on the technology park, so I didn't mention that.
It may be a subject of interpretation, though, if it's a prescription. It's like,
Well, a pharmacy's not involved. We discussed it at length.
But it's also a
but it's a matter of
not-for-profit.
opinion, isn't it? I mean, whether it's a retail use.
Well, we
It's a
can't-
prescription only. It's not like you're going in
You
and
couldn't
shopping
have, you couldn't
around,
have a pharmacy, would be considered retail.
but it's not a pharmacy.
No, but you said if it's prescription only, I'm just saying a pharmacy's not allowed.
The pharmacy sells retail items also, so.
Let me just shed a little light on it, if you don't mind, Madam Chairman.
Please.
I understand the issue came up, I did talk to Eric, there are restrictive covenants
that were voted at that town meeting back in 1981. 30 years has gone by. There is a development agreement with the Cape Cod Commission that still has a few years of life in it. But let's just say for the sake of argument, if the zoning allows retail sales in a light industrial zoning. For the sake of argument, that's okay, Jim. They process, they acquire, they can distribute or dispense, they can process these things, they can manufacture these items. If they can't have the retail sales component there, then they can't have it. But just like if they're making widgets, or MIT.
Absolutely.
Right.
I was just told to bring it up, that's all.
And that's okay. And we have had those discussions with Attorney Duffy and with Eladio about what is a retail sale. Is it something I can walk into from the general public? I like one of those, and I like one of those. Where in this instance, you have to have a letter to register with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as a true retail. Either way, I think we're okay. If we get LIB, they can make them there, and they can bring them somewhere else to sell.
Rich? I agree with Doug that it's, what has become, what is a pharmacy today is what we used to call a general store. I mean, when you go in to get your prescription and you see household cleaners and, lingerie and whatever, you're not talking about a drugstore or a pharmacy. You're talking about a retail store where, as Brian says, anybody can walk in and put down their money. Yes, some people have to bring in a prescription, but not everybody does to bring that in. You have to look at what is meant when a contract is made, what is within the reasonable contemplation of the parties. And what they would be thinking of, I would say, would be they don't want to have something like a CVS go in there or a Walmart, where you would be getting that kind of a crowd, the general crowd going in there. Here what we're talking about is something that appeals to very limited clientele that we don't want, for sound planning reasons, to go into what are our retail districts. And I also think it's something that when that covenant was executed, wasn't even thought of. Wasn't any such thing as a marijuana dispensary back then. So, and I also think, what extent could we perhaps approach the commission and ask them to give us a ruling on that, so that they would consider that.
I don't think the board even has to go there.
All right.
If you look at the definition section of this bylaw, it's pretty clear what a marijuana treatment center, registered marijuana dispensary is. It cites that it's to cultivate and possess and process and transfer, sell or distribute these MIPs and related educational materials to registered qualifying patients. And when you go down to the qualifying patient, registered qualifying patient, it's someone of a certain age that has certifications by 2 physicians that have to be board certified, and these are right out of the state regulations. But even so, let's just say for the sake of argument, we call that retail sales, then that component of selling cannot go into the technical. But the processing of the materials could. And they'd have to find another zoning district, and that's why I have the LIC in there. They may want to sell it out of it, or they may take it somewhere off and to sell. That's their business.
When you construe a contract, though, you do it by what the reasonable person would have meant when they put a term in there. And no reasonable person, when they put that restriction on retail in there, would have been talking about restricting marijuana sales to licensed buyers. Because that's,
Bob? I think any applicant is going to have to comply with the standards anyways. So I think they pretty much dictate what's going to happen on any piece of property in whatever zone. If they can meet all those standards, so be it.
Jim?
Well, I am our representative to the EDIC, and I'm just bringing their message. They do not agree with Richard's opinion, and they wanted to I'm bringing a message perfectly clear that they do consider this retail, and they're going to oppose it. And it's their industrial park. And that's what I was told to say.
But that's only if it's sold there. If they're.
Well, if you don't sell it there, the issue goes away. But Richard was saying that
Right.
that we can tell them to sell it there. So I just want to make it clear,
Yeah.
and I brought it up at the last two meetings of the EDIC, and I'm delivering a clear message both times, that they're opposed.
If the property owners, the tax commission want to enforce their restrictive covenants, consider that's almost a private matter. Because the zoning allows it, but my sense is, they'll just be producing stuff.
And again, this is not my personal opinion, I actually agree, I'm just bringing, you're a representative on the board, and I'm here to say what we've discussed at the last two meetings.
You're doing a good
That's
job.
it.
Yeah, I appreciate
Well,
that.
I'm going along with the rest, I'm not
I'm
arguing.
just saying it's not as clear cut as the EDIC people would have it.
Well, they think it is.
Well, that's where you get,
I'm done,
yeah.
They may be right.
I said my point.
And that's also why we've got both light industrial B and light industrial C in here, so that there are other areas where sales could happen. Ralph?
Yes, I think this is a good draft, Brian. I couldn't find anything in here that was, what I thought was quite appropriate in the two examples you gave us of Mashpee and Dennis. And that had to do with signage.
It's because we take, the sign bylaw is not in zoning anymore.
Say again?
The town's sign bylaw
Yeah.
is not regulated in the zoning bylaw anymore. It's a general bylaw. You'd have to have a separate article about signage in the general bylaw. Signs are not regulated under zoning, They haven't been for 20 years. So you would have to amend the sign bylaw. That's a separate article.
Okay, thank you. I didn't realize that. Because I thought, obviously it is not that way in those other towns, and some of the points that they made about signage I thought were very pertinent, and maybe we need to take a look at amending our signage, our bylaw because of this.
Right, and that's fine point. This is the wrong vehicle, you have to hop in another vehicle to do something.
Okay, and so we could propose an amendment to our signage bylaw. We, the planning board, could.
Yes, you
Okay, so my recommendation would be that we consider that in the very near future. That's my recommendation, not only mine.
Okay, are there other comments? Yeah, Paul?
I have a very minor comment. In the purpose, we refer to Massachusetts Department of Public Health, but we don't refer to it as, for example, the department. And further down in qualifying patient, we say registration card from the department. And then further down, we again repeat Massachusetts Department of Public Health. We want to be consistent, we probably should make that middle one Massachusetts Department of Public Health, so there's no confusion there what department we're talking about.
So does anybody wish to put other changes in here, additions, subtractions, from what it is currently?
Does this go to the town meeting?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
That's what this
Will that
is.
be on the agenda for this November, next month?
spring.
Spring.
Not yet?
So
But-
what I'll do is you can bring them in the spring, a zoning bylaw and a sign bylaw together, but they be two separate articles. And once I know now that this is heading the board's direction, we can try to ferret it out there, people's comments, and we'll be done. File it for the warrant and then
I would like to remind the board, because it always catches us by surprise, that the Springtown meeting for any bylaws gets very crunchy in time, because town meeting for the fall is in November, and suddenly things have to be ready for the warrant in January, or if we have a special in February, I believe. And we've got the two holidays in there. So we have very few meetings in which to get all of this settled, which is why we really have to pay attention to it now and get it as solidified as we possibly can, as early as we possibly can.
That was done.
Yeah, I think.
I know, I think it is too.
Some of the fewest changes we've made to it.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah,
But that's
so-
because, you know, remember, Brian's been
Never-
asking us along,
Never
too.
praise the day until it's gone.
Right.
So, yeah.
So this is the type of thing that we've given him some feedback already, but that's the beauty of having a planner.
We'll get a lot
this
of interest
caliber.
in this from the Commonwealth because it's a by right.
Mhm.
Most other cities and towns have made it a discretionary permit. So this might get some notice.
Okay, referrals, and we've got two, Article 25 and Article 29, that we need to put referrals into the selectmen. This is not our thing that we're sponsoring or anything else, but these are referrals that go to the selectmen. And
They're in the middle of making recommendations for the warrant, so they would just like some of your thoughts and comments regards these two articles, fresh by Heather Harper, to assist the Board of Selectmen. They will still be making the motion, they will still be making the recommendation to town meeting, but they'd like to hear from the planning board a bit. I did also give you a strikeout and insert language version of both bylaws. I'm sorry, for the demolition bylaw, because Article 29 is a new thing. So you'll have this that shows it before and after also. And I think it would be helpful for the Board of Selectmen to hear some of the technical things, and if board members have any comments on more of the substantive things. Some of the technical things we noticed about the article is that a public hearing is a proceeding held by the commission for applications for demolition pursuant to General Law, Chapter 48 is not correct. 48 is a zoning act. They also go on to offer that 4 members must be present to constitute a quorum. I'm not sure if that's the proper place for that.
Isn't that a charter issue?
And that's more of a charter issue and an open meeting law issue. Where it says amend sections E and F of Chapter 107, well, it should be subsections E and F of Section 3 of Chapter 107. Those are the types of things that we'll do for you. We'll pick up all those little nuances for you. But if you have an opinion to the Board of Selectmen on the substance, which is they would require a hearing prior to the issuance of a demolition permit. I think that is probably what they're looking for the most.
Jim?
I'm of the opinion that a hearing is required by the existing bylaw.
It says a public hearing, it's unclear what they mean by that. Right now, the interpretation would mean that an open session, a hearing, but there's no notice to a butter sent, there's no, I think what they're trying to do is within 300 feet under Chapter 48. Like on a special permit, the abutter to the abutter within 300 feet, you can cross the street, you publish notice in the newspaper for 2 weeks prior to your hearing, file it with the town clerk. I think that's what they're.
No, that isn't clear. I didn't really catch that, but that's what they're saying?
I think that's what reference to the zoning act's about. Right now, the bylaw simply states, if you look at the strikeout version of it, they just hold a hearing.
The other thing here that says, what I find difficult, is it says if the building commissioner receives it. Now, I thought when you file something with the town clerk, and he copies, and the bylaw says he's supposed to copy the historic commission and the building commissioner, that the applicant at that point has satisfied his responsibility. But to make the applicant responsible for the building commissioner or the historic commission for reading their mail is, I think, not fair.
Technical issue. That's a technical issue again. I think it's subject to Brian's technical issues concerns that he might have with these. I think that we just address the substance of them. I think substantively, both of them are right on.
I'm questioning the language received as opposed to given.
Yes,
And that's my point.
So
You can
Brian
either
wants to
agree or
know,
disagree.
does he want us to,
Well, both.
does he want us to give substance to it?
The existing bylaw, if I remember correctly, says
Okay.
that the applicant or the applicant's agent has to file with the town clerk. And there's a specific form, and right on that form at the bottom, it says, CC, the building commissioner, and CC, Historic District Commission. So what this language is doing is taking that responsibility from the town and making it the applicant's responsibility that the information be transferred to those two commissions, so the commissioner could say, which he has in the past, I never received that. That's a real burden to put on the applicant, and that's what I'm bringing up.
Good point, but the reason for not wanting to do this substantively would be what?
I'm just saying with the language is what I'm talking about.
Right, okay, but in substance, you think it's a good idea to get the language right and do it.
I am talking about the language here that I disagree with, and I thought I was pretty clear on that, and if I need to explain it again, I will.
No, you just don't want the burden to be on the applicant.
Transmittal of the information from department to department shouldn't be an applicant
Right.
responsibility,
Right.
and that's what I'm talking about.
That's a procedural issue. That's a procedural issue.
That's in the
I
bylaw.
agree with you. I agree with you on that procedural issue. But I think when we're talking about the substantive issue, should we beef up the requirements of the hearing for demolition of historic buildings? And I say on that substantive question, yes, absolutely. Work out the best technical and procedural way we can do it and do it. Okay, and let Brian address those issues to make it, to punch it up. That's,
Ralph?
Yeah, I was at the Board of Selectmen's meeting in the audience when both these articles were presented by the what's the right word?
Petition.
The petitioner, sorry, thank you. And I thought both of them made very good presentations and made very good arguments for what they were doing. I did not have access to the things that Brian has alluded to, these, the technicalities of it. But I thought both of these men made very, very good presentations and good justification for what they were proposing.
Doug?
So I agree that it puts more burden on the applicant, but really it just makes it clear that the applicant needs to communicate not only on file with the town clerk, but with the commissioner and the district commission that this is something that's happening. So it improves communication. It's another copy that has to be delivered by the applicant, but it's in keeping with the process that we have, for instance, with dealing with building permits. We used to put in our permit applications and the town would kind of shuffle it along, and sometimes they would get stuck between departments and no one would know what was happening. And now the policy is that the contractors are responsible to keep their permit moving themselves, and every time a department is finished with it, you got to check up on it. There's a couple that shuffle them along, but for the most part, you have to take responsibility for your own package, and this is part of that. It's not part of that, but it's in line with that. I think it's a good thing.
Bob?
I agree with Richard with beefing up the public hearing aspect of this, because I think it would help the public, because they seem to be confused about these issues as well. As we found out when we had applicants before us, it turned into a historical commission meeting as opposed to a planning meeting, so I think that would help.
If you're defining public hearing, you cannot say 4 members must be present. You can't define it that closely, because public hearing is generic
Right.
for all boards,
Yeah.
and so you could say a quorum must be present.
Yeah.
Well, he'll fix that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there,
true for anything.
that one, there's a lot of fixing that needs to be done in the definition, I think.
But I think notice to abutters and things like that
Absolutely.
needs to happen.
Yeah. Any further yeah, Paul?
Yeah, two very brief comments again. The first, line A, public hearing held by the commission, that should be historical commission, because that's the first time that's introduced into this bylaw. And secondly, the operative, as I understand it, is the building has to be on the list of significant buildings. If it is not on that list, this does not apply. Is that correct? Thank you.
Okay. So if there's nothing further, then we move on. Yes.
The board's recommendation to the selectmen, the substance of the article,
Positive, well,
but they need to be cleaned up.
Cleaned up.
Yeah.
When a significant amount of cleaning up has to be done, Brian, what happens? Substitute another article for?
The article just puts the town meeting members on notice as to what's going to be discussed. Just like when we make a change to the zoning article, it's either as printed or as recommended if we make changes.
Right.
So obviously, the recommendation might be different than what's in the warrant. We'd have to clean it up. Who does that?
That's what I'm asking.
No.
Who would do that in this case?
So now we'll point it out that, there's certain technical flaws.
Okay.
To be remedied. Who does that? I don't know.
Okay.
One last comment. I'm all set with the public notice, newspaper, and all that, but to require the applicant to channel this through commissions and make sure that they hear it and address it, I think is too heavy a burden. One of the reasons why we have a problem is some of our commissions don't even meet because they can't get a quorum, and that means they could de facto veto it and sit on it and never meet and hold it up forever. So I think we need to put a little pressure on the boards to actually do their job. In this case, that's what happened. No meeting was held for 2 months.
Okay, so we move on to our
Which sentence is it in F?
F.
Which sentence are you referring to?
No, I just don't think that we can make the applicant responsible for making sure that the departments I think if they advertise it in the newspaper, file it with the public clerk, and notify the abutters, I think that they have satisfied their requirement for notice as in any other zoning issue.
Okay, I just need you to help me point out
Well-
which paragraph are we talking about?
Well, they said that, somewhere it said here that it was only, that they couldn't go forward until the information had been received by the building commissioner.
I'm looking for that.
Okay, I saw it here, I'll have to read it in here.
Last line. Next
Right here, isn't it?
next to last.
It says, yeah, if the building commissioner has received such written notice and the 6 months delay period, I say the building commissioner, if he gets the same notice as the abutters.
Oh, I think that references the second above it. The building commissioner will act on an application for admission, blah, 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 until such written notification from the historic commission. Then if the building commissioner receives such written notification from the historic commission, the onus is on them, not the applicant. Not the way I'm reading it. But let me just let me look at that a little harder for you, and then at least reference in the.
Well, but let's just make it clear, if it says from the historic,
That's from the historic commission.
if you're concerned about due process to the applicant who wants to demolish, all you have to do is put on here a requirement that the commission, after receipt of that letter, must hold the hearing within a certain amount of time, and if they don't, then the condition is waived.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
perfect, 6 months,
Yeah,
that's the same thing.
if they don't hear it, it's waived.
Good.
I'm fine with that.
That's a long time. 6
That's a long time. We didn't draft this, Brian.
Compel a hearing. The comment is to compel a hearing.
Yeah, I think we need to have,
Yeah, so it doesn't just sit out there in limbo forever.
Okay. Compel a hearing by HC within. Okay.
Okay,
Substitute.
Paul.
Just to clarify, a follow-up of what I was referring to earlier, list of significant buildings. There's a federal register of historic buildings, there's a state registry. this is a list of significant buildings designated by the Historic Commission, is that correct?
Yes,
So if it's not on the list, it doesn't count.
doesn't count.
And how often do they put buildings on the list? It's up to them, I guess.
It's on file with the town clerk's office.
They were looking at the Magansett area not so long ago. As you know, that's had a big hearing on that. I'm not sure where those nominations went. But they look at it every other year or so, building that should be on or off. The good news there, Paul, is that we actually hired a consultant to take a look at that bylaw, take a look at that list, and make sure it makes sense. There might be some buildings that need to come on, so that we truly should come on.
But there's specific criteria for adding a building to that list, is that correct?
I think
Or is
right
it
now,
arbitrary?
it's the age of the building is the first thing they look at. It's a certain age, I think it's 25 years, and then it has to have certain architectural features. I'm not exactly familiar with all the criteria, but there are some tests. You know, the first test is age and then architecture.
Whether the building survives its integrity as to its original state, or whether it's been modified.
Correct.
This would be a big one.
Okay, so you agree in substance, and it needs a lot of technical.
Yep. Okay,
We're up to 29. What do you think, Board? You want to do underground utilities?
yeah.
I think we do. They're talking about velocity here.
Well,
And I think
well, they're talking about a lot of things here. But first of all, remember, we were working on the comprehensive plan, and we were discussing as a board the reinforce or retreat concept, which grabs what this is about. And some of this is completely out of our jurisdiction to be able to do. We can't require removal of poles.
We can prevent installation of new ones,
Yes, we could.
that's what they're saying.
But we'd have to do a new zoning bylaw. And maybe we couldn't really do that because it comes under our site plan review if we want to do underground utilities. So it's a mixture of things that,
we could pass a zoning bylaw, correct me if I'm wrong, that simply says no overhead poles in velocity zones.
I'm not sure you can, remember there's a Department of Public Utilities exemption. The utilities can move forward. So I'm not sure whether or not you have full subject matter control or jurisdiction.
Okay, is there any agency in the town which, apart from planning and zoning, would have public safety concerns?
Again, no matter what, if it's Conservation Commission that regulates the velocity zoning, my sense is certainly it's going to come out of zoning. Let's just say for the sake of argument, Conservation Commission. Again, there are certain Department of Public Utility exemptions or appeal processes that bypass your local body.
Maybe we should be working on the state Department of Public Utilities, so they out of their freaking minds to allow, given the climate change, the rise in the sea level, the increase in velocity zones, to allow the continued construction of overhead poles and velocity zones.
Well, that's a great substantive question. The local planning committee and the planning board will be talking about that in earnest. On the 22nd, you're going to get your reading list from Marlene, your bibliography. It's a fundamental question. The immediate question in front of us is whether or not this board has subject matter jurisdiction. My recommendation is you don't. Do you have the time? No. Is it a worthy, noble cause? Of course. But practicalities have intervened here that help is on the way. It's like I have to lose 100 pounds, but I'm not going to lose 100 pounds that day. We're going to have to do this over a long time.
Fine. But maybe what we should do on our referral is say we are positive on the substantive bits. We doubt the ability to do this now jurisdictionally. We strongly urge the selectmen to get together with selectmen from other towns, petition the Department of Public Utilities, and that, I'll co-sign that.
stick with the.
I think that's too
Puts it
much.
back in their court.
Remember, the substance of this Article 29 is that town meeting will direct the planning board to do a study in 2 phases. We're already working on
Right,
this.
yes, but I think we should put it back to the selectmen and say, it should be, should town meeting direct the selectmen to petition the board, the state board of public utilities to allow this.
We can only endorse it or reject it.
Yeah.
No, it's a referral, we can give them anything we want.
Bob?
Well, the idea that putting everything underground is the panacea is not really the case, because it's trees that take down wires. It isn't poles falling. In fact, in Sandy, they found not only were the underground utilities inundated with water, also sand, a mile inland. So it isn't the panacea that everybody, it's nice looking, and maybe something in neighborhoods, because I know in my neighborhood, there was a tree that went down, took the power out to our street. They have been out there cutting trees as of late, but putting everything underground is not the total answer.
Yeah. Jim?
Well, I tried to deal with this a few years ago with the Old Stone Dock Association and when they were redoing wires along Surf Drive. And I really think we should need to hold a public hearing with NSTAR, because I was told that the reason why they do it is the step, and I'm not an expert on power, and I don't want to sound like I am, but there's these little boxes called transformers that they put on every 3rd pole, and they don't do very well underground or underwater. And that's one of the reasons why they put them above the floodplain. But I think we should hear from an expert on that before we write any bylaws. So I suggest having a public hearing, bringing NSTAR in and electrical people and listening to what they have to say, and then moving forward as opposed to just a knee-jerk reaction. And running forward with the bylaw that, if I remember correctly, isn't going to work.
Right.
I don't know for sure, but I think there's a problem with putting transformers, those things underground that get underwater. I think you'd have these big explosions.
Ralph?
Yeah, I think we would probably recommend indefinite postponement on this if for no other reason than the fact that we've already established our, the budget for our staff for this year. And this is coming into this year. And you can't, if you want to go back and revisit the budget and what we decided we would have the staff work on this year for us, then vote for this. But if you don't want to do that and you want to maybe consider it in the future and get more information, then I would say, you know, we should not support this at this time.
I think my concern not only is referenced by what Ralph has said, but I don't believe staff as is has the capability of conducting this kind of a study. It involves costs, it involves some engineering decisions, it involves a lot of programming, and aside from the ability, the availability to do this work, I'm not sure that's a burden that should be placed on the staff of the planning department. This would require, I would think, an outside consultant to do these kinds of studies.
I could see this more as an action item for the comprehensive
Right.
plan,
Right.
as opposed to a warrant article.
Because it would require not just the planning board, it would require a multi-departmental effort.
Or an
And
outside consultant.
NSTAR and/or outside consultant. If, with the study that the planning board is going to be doing on the comprehensive plan, with the retreat or reinforce, depending upon what we come up with our decision for the comprehensive plan, this may fit into it. But it may not in all instances either. So I think, first, it's premature. Maybe not for where we are with major storms and everything else, but it is a premature warrant article requesting the planning board to do this study. It jumps jurisdictions that aren't planning board jurisdictions and asks the planning board to take action on it. So I think, like Ralph, we should recommend that the selectmen IP it.
Yep.
This is planning board, this is planning staff.
I know what it says. So Marlene and Brian just won't do anything.
We gotta do it.
You'd have to hire.
So, what, does anybody wish to make a motion on this as far, Doug?
I would make a motion that we say we'll take this under advisement and incorporate these ideas into our long-range planning, but at this time, we recommend indefinite postponement.
I'd second that.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Rich, comment?
I don't disagree with doing that. I do think that we should be more proactive in communicating with the selectmen as to what the issues are, and particularly the jurisdictional issues, and urge them to deal with those.
But that's not what we're being asked about here with this.
No, I know that's not what we're being asked about, but we do have responsibility as the planning agency in this town. And when we see an opportunity to move that along, we don't simply say, well, that's none of our business, so we're not going to deal with it, because we can't deal with it, that we should, if that's what the selectmen think that would be a wise thing to do, or, to move along as a planning objective, but it's beyond our municipal jurisdiction to do it, we should ask the selectmen to address that issue first.
But that's what we are doing, Rich, with the comprehensive plan. We do get the selectmen involved in these units.
But
We're gonna take this under advisement and include it in our planning.
What would it hurt the selectmen to bring this issue to the attention of the DPU? What would it hurt the selectmen or the town?
They'll do that of their own volition if they wish to do it.
What if they don't think about doing it?
With this in front of them, it might stimulate their thoughts in that direction.
If we just make it an offhand remark, then that surely will stimulate their thoughts.
Not necessarily. Besides which, that's really not what we're discussing. We're discussing our recommendation, our
IP.
referral to the
We agree,
selectmen.
IP.
We agreed, IP, but now let's take
I
a
think
vote
we
on
should- I
that.
think we should give them a
It's been
detailed
moved and
explanation why.
seconded. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain.
We should
Okay.
give them a detailed explanation why, with alternatives
We're done.
that are objections are
We
based
can
on.
talk with them. All right, next is correspondence, and I do not have the folder in front of me, and Brian, I think there is correspondence. Uh-oh,
I'm not here for that.
no.
It's not my fault.
No, it's not. No, it's the
No, last week I did the same thing.
correspondence. Oh,
Okay,
5-minute recess.
Recess.
the correspondence was a couple of letters from the Pleasant Bay Coalition agreeing with the NEP report for Rand's Canal, Wild Harbor. The planning board has a letter to the board of selectmen, the planning board is CC. Those are the two letters in the file that I want to look at. I apologize for them not being here today. They're upstairs somewhere in the planning board. That was the question. Essentially, the NEP reports are good to go for those two points. The opinion of the Pleasant Bay.
okay. So the question was either whether I was going to read those into the record, and I wasn't. I was just going to tell you the substance, which is what Brian has just told you. Okay, we don't have anything else. There's usually an article or an item on the agenda about new issues that you want brought up in the future. Does anybody? Yes, Ralph.
Right, I'd like, if we,
It's not on the agenda, so we can't take it up, but you can,
well, then I'll go back to correspondence and the lack of. I'd like to know whether or not we received any correspondence from the Cape Cod Commission referring to
I'm not going to
the,
play games now, Chairman.
No.
Correspondence was in the file, was two letters.
Yeah, that's it. that was it. Jim?
Can I mention something I'd like to talk about in the future? Is this the appropriate?
No, because it's not on the agenda, unfortunately.
I'm sorry it's not on the agenda.
It's okay.
There are
I'll bring it up
things you
another
want
time.
to place on the agenda. I would recommend just give us a call, and we can talk
Right.
about it, and I can chat with you.
Absolutely,
Right.
no problem.
That would be comporting with the open meeting law.
so this was an oversight? This was
Yeah.
This wasn't intentional.
Ralph, of course it was an oversight. And I apologize, it's always my responsibility, it's not on the agenda. If there are items that the board would like to see on a future agenda, so that you can what would be the meeting on, not play some games. You call, discuss it with Pat, that's fine.
Okay, so the process is we call you, you discuss it with Pat, and then it gets...
Yeah, or,
okay,
but
that's
it
fine.
was an inadvertent oversight.
I have a
early
whole
on.
different issue, I'm not with the
Yeah,
same thing, I just
yeah.
want to know the process,
No,
I'm
no.
fine.
Okay, guys, then I need,
Motion to adjourn.
yes, can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.